All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Jessie, the Release Day Diva. I'm here with Ashley, my amazing personal assistant, and Rachel Van Dyken, and we are going to dive right in. So, tell us about your new release that's coming out on the 8th.
Okay, so the Dare's releasing, I almost said May 8th. What is wrong with me? July 8th in a couple weeks. It's the third book in the Bet series. It can be read as a standalone, but it's basically Beth's story and Jace's story. You guys met them. If you've read the Bet series, you met them in The Wager. They kind of had secondary roles in that book, and this is kind of their book and their love story. And it's the final book, at least for now, the final book in the Bet series.
Okay. That's awesome. So all the books can be kind of read as standalones, but they're like all in the same world.
Totally in the same world. So it's kind of like when you have a family and you read about each brother or like each sister and like do their love story. So the Bet series is kind of like that. So you don't have to read, if you want to read the third one as a standalone, that's totally fine. You can go back and read the other ones, but they're not connected. Like you don't, in order to like know what's going on, you don't have to read the first one first. So.
Okay. So is this, what genre are they? Are they contemporary romance, but what are they, new adult, adult?
You know, they started as new adult, but they're really more contemporary romance. It has that new adult feel to it, so you still have a lot of that fun dialogue and a lot of different, I guess, drama that's going on. But for the most part, they're contemporary because the characters, at least in this book, the characters are a lot older.
Okay.
And I think, oh no, I thought I lost your sound, but just kidding, we're good. Sorry. No more panic. We're good.
Okay. All right. All
I
right.
have a question.
Yes. Ashley, go ahead.
How did you feel when the Bet made the bestseller lists?
When it made, you know what's funny is I actually talked about this yesterday. I think I still go into shock a little bit when I think about it. When it first hit New York Times, I was really excited because I'd only had one other book before that hit it. And it was a Regency, so it was cool to have like a contemporary romance hit New York Times. But when it hit #1, I actually didn't know. I had had a couple agents who were I was talking with, and I was trying to pick out which agent I wanted, and one of them emailed me and said, "Congrats on #1," and I thought they meant congrats for having #1 on Amazon. So I was like, "Oh, thanks," and I couldn't figure out like why they were so excited. So I was like, I mean, that's a big deal, that's great, but for me, I'm like, oh, well, it's been #1 on Amazon for a while, so, but you don't want to like talk them down, and so then they were like, "I'm popping champagne for you," and then I got more emails, and I'm like, what is going on? Because when you have an agent, you find out that Wednesday usually what lists you made and what your ranking is, and they tell you before it actually goes out to the public. Just because that's the cool thing about having an agent, you find out a lot sooner. And so since I didn't have one yet, I had no idea. And so then the agent that I actually chose called me the next day and was like, "Hey, did you know?" And so it was pretty cool. I still, I don't know. I like I said, like I still go into shock over it just because I feel like that's something. Getting on the New York Times first off is something that's like once in a lifetime, but to get on it repeatedly and then to have a #1 spot is kind of surreal. I mean, in my mind, I'm like, that's what Nicholas Sparks does, okay? Like that's his spot. Like, to be there, I'm just like, that's awesome. Like it's cool just to be in that same department, and if I did nothing else for the rest of my life, I'd still be like, good job.
Yeah, no, it's every author's dream, right? Like it's something you always like aspire to, and then that's awesome. Like I love seeing it happen to deserving people, I should say,
But those undeserving people, they better not get that spot right.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you're like, I'm just kidding. No, I think it's so cool. Like I love it. Like, so you're are you self-published, or are you with like a bigger publishing house?
Right now?
Yeah. What do you do?
So right now I'm both. I'm a hybrid author. So I have certain titles that are with Hachette or with Grand Central Forever Romance, and then I have other titles that I do self-publishing with. And so it's I kind of like doing both. Doing both kind of gives you the freedom to be with a big publisher and see what that's like, be in stores, have that backing, which is kind of awesome. I was telling another author the other day that, for an indie author, it's cool because people automatically see your name in stores, and so they're going to automatically go and search you on the internet, because a lot of times it takes people seeing your name a couple times before they're going to trust you or trust that that's a good book or that you're a good author. And so having that added marketing where you're in stores is really, really helpful for an indie author. So on that one side, it's cool with traditional publishing that you kind of get that backing, but on the other side, you don't have a lot of control And if you're used to publishing your own books, it kind of sucks when you have no control. You know, I remember when I got the cover art for Elect, I hadn't even seen it. They're like, oh, yeah, you did. I'm like, no. I didn't see it until it went live, or like the week before it went live, and the girl had the wrong color of hair. So it's kind of like, in the end, you don't really get that much of a say in things. And with self-publishing, obviously you choose your own cover art, you choose your editors, you choose your release dates, and so I really like having that control. And with being a hybrid author, I make sure to sign a non-compete contract so that I'm able to still release my stuff and still be with a traditional publisher. So that's kind of how I work things out with release dates and make it so that I still have that controlling factor, but so I still have that support from the bigger houses.
That's awesome. I've heard of a lot of authors going hybrid, so you can still kind of have the best of both worlds. And along this lines, like, how did you feel when you first saw like one of your books like in a store? Like, was that like a huge surreal moment for you?
I did a little dance and I was excited, but I'm not one, like, I don't draw. Maybe it doesn't seem like that right now. I don't draw attention to myself. Like, I'm more of like, yay, and then I like hide and walk down the aisle. My husband, however, is not like that. Like, he gets really proud. So I was like, should I buy it? Should I buy my own book? Like, what do I do? Like, they'll see my debit card. And so I'm like having this total moral dilemma over like what I should do. And I started getting sweaty in the store. And he's like, babe, just buy it. Just buy the book. And so we went and checked out. And I'm thinking, like, I hope he doesn't say anything. And so I was like, babe, don't tell anyone, like, this is me. Like, I'm trying to be like incognito. And then the minute we get up to the checkout line, he's like, by the way, and then he starts like telling this lady, and she could have cared less. She was like, okay, good for you. Like, do you want to stick with her? And I was so embarrassed. So it's really cool seeing yourself in stores, but I try not to be like, fuck, because it's awkward. And then it's red, and it's embarrassing. So it's more of like the silent excitement on the inside that bursts out, and that's it.
That's awesome.
That's funny. Okay, so I have a question, and this is just my personal. Travis is my favorite character of yours. Like, I adore him. And he's from The Bet, for those who haven't read that series. Who's your favorite character that you've written?
No, you can't ask me that. That's not fair. That's like, you can't ask an author that. That's like asking what your favorite book is, and that's also like asking a mom who she would let live out of her children. Like, that's not, you can't ask that. You know, it's probably every character is my favorite character when I'm writing them.
Yes.
That's a really good answer. Good job, Rachel. I should get a high five for that.
Virtual high five.
Thank you. So right now, or my favorite character for a while was Tex from the Eagle Elite series. Writing his book Illicit was really intense, and I think he's probably still my favorite right now. It always happens that when I'm writing another book, so I just started writing the third book in the Ruin series, and it always happens that as you're starting and it's new, you're really not attached to that character yet. You have to, like, you're just like you're writing it. It's like when you're reading a book, you have to grow, and that character has to grow on you, and finally they're like, oh, they're awesome. But it takes a while, and so right now I'm still not super into Tristan, who's my hero in the story. So he's got a lot of time to make up for it, I guess, and he has pretty big shoes to fill. So, but you can't really compare like Mafia with normal life. So
Right.
I guess it's kind of unfair to be like, you know, to compare them. But yeah, right now it's Tex. It might be for a while. We'll see.
That's awesome. Okay. Oh, here's a good one. If you could go on vacation with 3 authors, who would you choose?
Oh, that's a good question.
That is a good question.
I don't even know. Like, because I feel like when I do book signings, I'm already on vacation with a lot of those authors, and it's really fun.
Yeah.
I don't even know. That's a tough question. I'd probably want to go on vacation with someone like James Patterson, because he's incredible and he's had such a crazy career, and I think it'd be more of like a networking thing for me. That sounds horrible, but it'd be more of like picking his brain and trying to figure out how he does what he does and how he does it so well, you know, or someone like Nicholas Sparks, or people, John Green, who wrote The Fault in Our Stars, you know, people that I would really be able to pull from and be like, how do you live this life? Like, how do you do what you do? You know, those are the authors that I really admire, you know, because they've had such great careers and all for different reasons, and I think that for me, you know, meeting other authors is awesome and it's fun, but I'm always trying to pick their brains too, because everyone has, you know, their own ways that they market and their own ways that they communicate with their fans and how they write, and I just think it's so interesting to hear other people's writing processes. So, yeah.
Very true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have another question. This one's about the Seaside series.
Okay.
If it was made a movie, who would you have play Alec and all of them?
Alec and all of them, but really Alec.
But really Alec, he's who I really want to know.
He's the only person that counts. No, Alec in my mind is played by, I forget his last name, Douglas Booth. There we go. See, I knew it was in there somewhere. He's a British actor. He was in LOL with Miley Cyrus and Demi Moore, and he was also in Romeo and Juliet, the new remake of it. I think
okay.
Released a couple months ago. He sings, so he sang in LOL, which is why I was like, oh, he'd be perfect. And he kind of has like that brooding kind of rock star look. He'd have to put on a little bit of weight because I always say that Alec is a little bit bigger. And I had, this is gonna sound like a total teen girl. It's gonna like make me sound like I'm 15, but I had Jesse McCartney in mind for Dimitri because he has the blonde hair, and I think he could really pull it off. And guys mature a lot slower, right? So he could totally play someone in high school and still look like he's in high school. I did this in my mind. So like, if they're watching this, randomly on YouTube, you know what to do. But
See,
I'm sorry, what?
No, I was letting you finish. Sorry. I always picture as Alec. I always pictured Shane Harper. Do you know who he is?
I love Shane Harper. Yes.
That is just, I don't know why. That's who I picked. And then I actually Dimitri was just kind of like a random model. But yeah.
Again, it's all about Alec. I understand.
Yeah. So,
I feel out of loop. I had to Google these guys that year. I knew who Jesse McCartney was, but I had to Google the other two. I'm like, what do they look like?
I think that's hard, casting your own books. I don't know how good I'd be at that. At one point, The Bet and Elite were both in talks for being a Netflix series. And so that was a while ago, actually, it was when The Bet was doing really good, and it was before Elite started doing really good. And so I remember thinking, like, holy crap, what are we going to do? Who are they going to cast for this? What's going to happen? And, like, it's a lot of pressure because a lot of times, in those contracts, the author can say if they want to take part in that unless it's one of those exclusive contracts. So I'm still crossing my fingers that one day this will happen, but it would just be crazy, very surreal to see it, like, played out in front of you. Because that's how I write anyways. I feel like it's a movie playing in my head, and I'm just like typing what I see. So it'd be kind of cool to see it in real life and not just in my imagination.
That's a really good analogy, like the movie playing in your head, because that's how I feel when I write too. It's like I'm just sort of writing, like furiously typing what I see in my head.
You're like, wait, pause, and type it. Yeah.
Like, is there a pause? Like, yeah, or like it skips forward, and you're like, no, I didn't get that. Yeah, it's fun. It's definitely fun. Okay. Let's see. You write contemporary romance, paranormal, and new adult, all with distinct voices. Do you have a different writing ritual when you are working on the different subgenres?
Ooh, good question. I do. It's going to sound weird, but I switch playlists. I have different playlists for each book that I'm writing or that I'm doing. So, like, usually if you follow me on Spotify and you see what playlist I'm listening to, you can almost guarantee that's the book that I'm writing or currently working on. But I've noticed that when it comes to paranormal or it comes to dystopian, any of those, like, fantasy genres, I can't really listen to the same stuff that I would normally be listening to for new adult or for contemporary. Like, I really have to change my taste in music. Just like when I'm reading or writing Regency, I have to listen to all classical. Like, I can't listen to anything but orchestrated or music or stuff that has no voices, just because for some reason it makes it too modern for me. And I already have like a really, really huge problem with making my historical voice too modern, which is probably why some people don't like my historical books. But I like to make them fun and easy to read and not all about the history of that time and boring, I guess you could say. So I have to really be careful what I listen to. When it comes to writing Regency, the fairy tales, I actually listen to the soundtrack to each of those Disney movies. that helps. Listen to Frozen. No, listening to any of those soundtracks actually helps a lot, just because it gets me in the mood for that. When I wrote Whisper Music, I listened to the Beauty and the Beast soundtrack, Phantom of the Opera. I listened to a lot of Phantom of the Opera. So it just depends. For me, music has always been a part of my life, and so it's something that helps me get in the mood and kind of get in the characters. Because when you're writing a certain character, you're in their head, and it's a very personal, very vulnerable thing. And so you want to be able to get that emotion down correctly. And if I don't have music kind of in the background, then I feel like I fail, which sounds probably weird, but I don't do well with silence. So, yeah.
I'm the same way with music and playlists and things like that. Like, you have to, right? You have to be able to switch. Like, because I was writing paranormal for a while too, and it was like the whole, like, you can't write in the same, like, it's totally different. So my whole, like, all of my stuff for paranormal is like all screamy and like that kind of stuff. But then, like, with contemporary, it's like all soft and like lovey.
And happy, and yeah.
You have to, you know, you have to have that, like, separation so your mind frame gets right. And I'm with you, though. You, like, music is a huge part of how I write, and I love that. I love to hear other authors feeling the same. And I like to look people up on Spotify, too, so I can see what their playlists are. I stalk people on Spotify all the time.
I love Spotify.
I might stalk you.
Okay, I have a kind of like a two-part question.
Okay.
You just announced yesterday that you are having a baby.
I am.
So how excited are you, first of all? And how hard is it going to be, or how hard is it to give up Starbucks?
How hard is it to give up Starbucks? You know, I'm really excited. I did the whole panic thing the first couple of weeks, like, what am I going to do? You know, not that, I think that whenever you have a change in your life, that whole selfishness comes into where you're like, but I have to change this and this and this. But I think that God definitely prepared me for this, because you know, with all the traveling I've done, I've noticed so many people take their kids on trips with them. So many people travel. So many people continue doing what they're doing. They just make it work. And I think, you know, me and my husband, we talked about it, and we were like, we just have to make it work for us. And the cool thing is, he owns his own publishing house. He does indie publishing. So we're both home all the time. Like, we're home and we're traveling together all the time. So I'm not doing it alone. Like, I'm not having to worry about, you know, when I'm writing, where's the baby? Like, you know, like, am I going to be taking away from that writing time? And for me, I don't ever want to have to sacrifice being with my fans and writing and getting those books out there. And so I had a couple people ask me, oh my gosh, are you not releasing next year? And I'm like, no, of course I am. I'm actually like 3 books ahead of schedule, so we're good. Yeah, so it's been really exciting. I'm excited now. Like, I'm at the point now where I'm really excited, and it's awesome. I'm done being sick. I think I'm done being sick. I probably shouldn't say that, but I'm finally feeling better and able to eat food, which is awesome because I love to eat. So that's been like a huge thing. Giving up Starbucks hasn't happened. I do decaf now. So
okay.
I do my like 1 cup of coffee in the morning that I'm allowed to have with caffeine. And then the rest of the day, if I want tea, I do decaf, or if I want normal coffee, I do decaf. I was doing sugar-free, but that's the thing that's really been hard for me, is I can't do as much sugar-free because it's not really good for babies. So I've been having to, like, change my diet a little bit. So that's been kind of hard. But the coffee thing has definitely been, it's still happening. Don't worry.
So is this your first? Is this your first baby?
It is our first, yes.
Oh, that's so exciting.
Yay.
Like, I remember. I just have one, and I just remember that, like, you know, we were totally trying when we had my son, but, like, still when we got pregnant, I was like, oh my gosh, like, this really is real. There's really a baby in there. Oh my gosh. Like, just have that, like, freak out. And then, yeah. Yeah,
the freak out always happens.
Freak out. It's amazing. Like, the whole experience is amazing. Even the crappy, like, I feel sick to my stomach all the time, like, I want to vomit all the time. That's, you know, that just means that the baby's healthy. So it's
so true. It's true.
That's how I looked at it. You know, I was not so lucky, and I threw up for 7 months straight, but I know.
Don't say things like that to me. You can't say things like that.
I don't think the same as me, though. Most people are not. I was, like, weird. But even then, like, once you start feeling the baby move and all that, it's so much fun. It's like, it's awesome. So I'm so excited for you, and that's awesome. Congratulations. Babies are such a blessing.
They are. We're excited.
Okay. What has been the toughest criticism given to you as an author? I know. Let's jump right into another topic. Sorry.
You know, I think the toughest thing for me to get used to was just people hating you. Like, I know that seems really weird, but, like, people are mean, like, really mean. And when I first started writing, I was horrified to see the things that people were so comfortable to say about me or about my book. And I get that when you're in the public eye like that, you're setting yourself up to have that type of criticism. And so I remember my first book that I released, I was just devastated, and I cried, and my husband's like, you asked for this, like this is going to happen, and instead of making it so that you give up, you need to let it, drive you forward. And so for me, it's kind of been that thing where I read every bad review, I read every good review, and I use those bad reviews as a way to get better. It's kind of like with writing, you're never going to get better unless you listen to that criticism. So when those people do say, she's the worst writer in the world, or she should die, or, like whatever they say, that they do say, or, yeah, or like, she writes like she's 8 years old, or, I mean, there's so many, people just attack, and with the way that we have technology these day and age, it's so much easier to type something than it is to say it to that person's face. And I get how that is. It's so much easier, like just online bullying, to like attack that person or to be angry for some reason, or, readers getting angry because I didn't accept their friend request fast enough, or upset because I didn't answer their message within an hour of when they sent it, and calling me names or cussing at me, which happens, and it's just crazy, but at the same time, that's life. And so I try to ignore the ones that are the crazies and go, okay, that's just people being people, and if they have a bad day, that's fine. And then the ones that are constructive criticism, I use to be better. I've had a couple people, email me, or people that are diehard fans say like, hey, this isn't very good, or you need to change this. And you could either choose in that moment to be offended and be like, well, whatever, I don't care. They don't know what they're talking about. Or you can be wise and logically look at it and be like, yeah, they're not going to like 10 out of 10 books. What can I do differently in the next one that I'm writing that I didn't do in this last one that really bothered them? Like, how can I please them? And I don't think it's a matter of pleasing everyone, because you're never going to, but it's a matter of kind of like getting a C on a test. Like, you want that A, and so what are you going to do next time to make sure that you get that A, at least from a greater or wider span of audience? And so I think that's how I handle that criticism. You're going to have your rough days. You're going to have days where you can't handle it well, but those are the days you don't look. Those are the days you don't, read those emails or check those reviews. So, I mean, it's going to happen. I would like to think I've gotten a lot better about it, and I try to keep a really positive attitude when it comes to it, because, again, it's one of those things that it's going to happen. And it's really helped me, too, just on social media in general, try to stay really positive, because you have the power to affect so much with other people. You have the power to lift them up or bring them down. And I think it's so much harder to lift people up, because it's easy to put people down, and it's easy to criticize because it makes you sometimes feel better. And I think that you are being the bigger person when you're choosing the harder thing than the easy road. And so I try to use that as something personally for me as an author when people ask for help or when readers are talking to me, and I just use it in everyday life. And I think that had I not had that happen to me, it'd be easier to be like, and grumpy. But knowing that, it's I want to do the other. I want to do the hard thing. So, yeah.
That's awesome.
That's a good answer. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, because it's easy to like wallow, it's easy to wallow in this. I have my days. I'm not allowed to. My husband's does never allow me to look at bad reviews anymore, because I'm like, why don't they like me? You have days that you just like want to cry and cry and cry. No, but you're right though. You can learn something from every, the constructive ones, the bad ones where people are like, why are you alive? Like, this is terrible. Like, those are funny to me. Those ones are funny. Like, I will laugh at those, because I'm like, what is wrong with this person in their life that they need to like attack somebody else like that?
Yeah, and that just makes you wonder, like, what is going on in your life that makes you, well, and then you almost get sad for that person, too.
I know, I do.
It's like, if you have enough time to sit there and rip me apart, then things are not right in that head of yours, or things aren't right, and then I just want to pray for that person and just, like, hope that their day gets better, and hopefully next time, you can win them over. I have some reviewers that follow me that will buy every single book that I write and give me a 1-star on every single one of them. Regardless, but it's weird because they're all like verified purchases, so it's like they say they hate me, but yet they keep buying me. So yeah, so I mean, you're gonna have those ones too, where you're like, you make no sense. Like, if you don't like,
why are you continuing to buy my books?
Like, thank you, but if you didn't like the last 10, you're not gonna like the 11th probably. So
probably the odds are stacked. That's funny though. No, there's always going to be critics, and there's always going to be that. But like, do you feel that like when with each book you write, you become better? Like, because I can see it with myself. Like, from the first book I wrote to like now, it's like I'm embarrassed by the first ones I wrote because they're like poorly written. But like, you learn, right? You learn each book, and from each like critique you get from somebody, you learn, right? Like, do you feel like you've grown a lot as an author?
I would like to think so. Some days when I have bad days, I think like I could do better than this, and I get so like today I had one of those days where I'm writing again. It's you're getting into a new book and you're trying to like find the character's voice, and I was ready to throw my computer against something. But I think that I hope that I get better, and I think that the more that you write, the better you're going to get. And if I look back on my older books, I cringe. And the fact that I'm re-releasing like 12 of them, I'm like, oh no. Because I always feel like I need to write at the very beginning. I wrote this a really long time ago, and I didn't know what a comma is. Well, I still don't know what a comma is. But please don't judge me based on this one book. Like, Evergirl does it re-released, and I still... because then to go back and rewrite those parts, you can't because they don't match because your voice is so different. So for me to go back and rewrite those 12 books, I couldn't. Like, I'd actually have to rewrite the entire book. So I can only change little things here and there. So it's kind of hard because then you have these readers that are maybe just discovering you and they're basing you off of say, that book. And I'm like, no, read Elite first. Just read Elite. Like, that's all you need to read. Read through it. Like, so then it's hard, too, because I don't want to recommend the old books. But then I'm like, but if they like historical, maybe they should. So, yeah. I could get obsessive about it really easy. So I just try not to think about it because then it stresses me out.
Me too. I actually took my very first 2 ones off sale because I was like, I don't want people to read those. Like, I really don't want people to even see them because how did people buy this ever and leave me 5-star reviews? Like, how did you ever do that? Yeah, it's funny. It's like it would be like me like posting a picture of myself like in 7th grade with like acne and stuff. That's how I feel. Like that's how I feel.
Yay! Yeah. No.
Yeah. Like, hey, mock me. Like it's it's hard. Sometimes it is hard being like you can't say anything bad. Like if somebody says something bad to you, you can't really respond to it, and so it's hard. All of it. It's it's hard, and you have to learn.
You do.
Yeah.
You do.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a question. When you write, so I know you listen to playlists, do you outline or do you just like go off the top of your head?
No. It's an easy question. I don't ever outline anything, ever. It'd be so cool if I could be one of those people that's that awesome to where I have these crazy outlines on my computer and then I stick to them and I'm like, in this chapter I'm doing this and like I actually stress myself out because I know what I want to do in my head and it's like all these thoughts and I'm like, but how is that gonna happen in the end? And so like that happened with the list that I had like 12 different things I wanted to do and I'm like, I don't even know how I can create this road that they're gonna go down and it was like I would just stress every time I wrote and so maybe an outline would help, but I think that in the end, like that organized chaos in my head actually makes for a better story because life is not an outline. Like you can't outline your life. I mean, we all try to, and I'm one of those people that it's like, I'm gonna do this and this and this. It just never happens. Like I don't even know why I try because I'm a total planner when it comes to life. But when it comes to like reality, that's not how things happen. And so in my books, I want them to be as close to reality as possible. So to plan those characters' lives, to me, I feel like when I read another author's book and I know that they did that, I can tell. And I mean, sometimes I can't, but for the most part, I feel like I can tell when they've really sat down. And that's not a bad thing. That's, that's great. And I think that's awesome. But I want it to be so shocking and so surprising that people are like, when they're reading and at the same time going, but that would totally happen because that's how people react to that situation. And that makes total sense. And a lot of times for my books, too, they're very dialogue driven. And so you can't really plan dialogue ahead of time because characters play off of each other. So for me to plan that it just wouldn't make sense. It wouldn't fit together. And so with my books especially, I let the characters decide what's going to happen. I'm kind of like the puppet master. I'm working with certain things, but I know for the most part in the end they might cut their own strings and be like, see ya, and take off. And I'll be like, okay. So they died. That's great. So for every book.
That's funny. So speaking of dialogue, do you tend to like write dialogue in your head as you're doing random things during the day? Like if you're like working out or like in the shower or like going grocery shopping, do you write dialogue in your head?
I do, and I think it sounds creepy when I say it out loud, actually. And then when I admit it, I'm sure that people are like, "Oh, that's why she writes because she's insane." That's so sweet. But I hear the characters' voices in my head, and I actually see them interacting with each other. So when I'm laying in bed and I'm trying to go to sleep like a normal human being, not a vampire, I end up thinking like, oh, if this character said this, and all of a sudden he starts talking, and then this person does this, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe he just said that to him. And then I'm sitting here going like, I have to write this down. And so I started sending emails to myself. But you know how like your iPhone will autocorrect things? So what happened is I would send these emails to myself, and then I would check them in the morning, all like, I'm going to write this dialogue, it's going to be so good. And then I would be like, what? He said what? That doesn't make sense. All of these like this misspelled, so I would spend like an hour trying to decipher what my character actually meant. Like, is he in a tree, or did he throw a tree? Like, there's a tree, but I don't know where it fits. They're not even outside. So it's always like interesting to try to read my own typing to myself. So I've tried to get better about like if I'm gonna write it out, I'm just gonna get out of bed, because I used to not get out of bed because my husband would be like, you need to stay. Because he has strict rules for me with work, because I try to work like 15-hour days, and he's like, I can't do that anymore. So now I just get out of bed really quick, and I can type it out really fast, and then I run back. So, and try not to get caught. It's like, please tag. So.
That's funny. That's really funny. You know, technology is funny. Like, we always think it's going to work better for us than it does, like the autocorrect and stuff. Like, Ashley and I were actually just talking about text we receive from, like, family members where, like, you can't really decipher what they're trying to say. I've done the same. Yeah, I've done the same where you're trying to, like, you wake up furiously and you're like, I'm going to say this, and you can't at all read what you're trying to say. Like, you spend, like, an hour trying to decipher, like, okay, was this what I meant? Or, and it never works. So I'm with you on the sneaking out. Sneaking out is always good.
Sneaking out of your own room never fails.
In the middle of the night.
Not weird.
No, not weird at all. No.
So what are you currently reading?
Ooh, what am I reading? I just got done reading. I want to say it's Olivia Drake. Olivia Drake? Is that a historical author? I think that's who it is. Abducted by a Prince. I think it just released. It's a historical romance. I actually was reading it just for fun because I bought a couple print books to take with me on the plane. My husband, was like, you need to stop staring at your iPad so long. It's like you go from, like 7 in the morning till 6 at night staring at your computer, and then you pull your iPad out when it's time to read. And so he was like, you really need to go back to print. Like, that was his instructions to me this last week. So I went to Target and saw my own book, but remember, I hid myself and then went and got like 3 other ones. So I usually read about a book a day, if not more, especially if I'm doing ARCs. But that's totally how I relax. And I can't read like new adult if I'm writing it. So right now, since I'm writing new adult, I'm not going to read any new adult at all. So that's why I picked out historical books, because I really don't want anything to leak into my head on accident. It never has, but like it's just like a fear of mine at this point. So especially since I have so many books out, and it terrifies me. So I read paranormal, fantasy, and historical when I'm writing new adult, and then when I'm writing historical, I'll switch back over to new adult and read that. Just because in my mind too, historical and new adult are like the same thing. Like Regency romance and new adult, it's always about the bad boy and the innocent girl, and like like it really is just different time, Yeah. So I feel like it's really good and it's interchangeable, but I'm not actually letting that sink into like that historical time period, because it's modern times, so it's really hard. So that's what I'm reading now, and I have a couple other ARCs. I'm reading MJ Carnell's newest release on the plane, because she sent it to me early, and I had other ARCs I had to finish, and so I have a couple others I think that are getting sent to me. So that's kind of fun part about being an author, is getting to blurb other authors' books and getting to read them weeks ahead of time. With Bella Andres, that was super fun, because I really wanted to read her new adult, and so I got to endorse it for her and read it early, so that's kind of a fun perk.
Yeah, it is.
The addiction.
Yeah, that is. Now, when you before you started writing, who were some of your favorite authors to read? Like, who inspired you?
I read a lot of Julie Lessman, a lot of Julia Quinn, and a lot of Eloisa James. So it's funny because my main authors that I read were all historical, and I think that's probably why I was drawn to that genre to start writing in the first place. Because it was total escapism for me. Being a school counselor, I saw drama every day. And it wasn't just like, little like drama that doesn't, it's not really that big of a deal, but it was like suicide and overdoses, and I had clients that ended up in the hospital, and I had, kids that were beaten, and I had, it was just a lot to deal with. And so for me to read new adult, I was like, no, it was way too close to home for me, and at the same time, it wasn't a really huge genre yet. So I really went towards the historical romance, because to me it was like, this magical magical land I could visit and not worry about all the stress of work and all the stress of all these kids that I was dying to take home with me and just protect and take care of. So yeah, those are the main authors that I read a lot of.
Okay.
Cool. Okay, so you weren't recognized in Target, but have you ever been like walking down the street and like someone said, "Oh my gosh, it's Rachel Van Dyken"? Like, has that ever happened?
At book signings, that happens. There's one girl. She's so funny. She's gonna kill me for saying this. I won't say your name, so don't worry. But she had posted a Facebook or a tweet about me and my husband seeing us, and then it was weird because then I get on my Facebook and I'm like, okay, so someone was watching me while I was checking into my hotel room. But you know, for the most part, people are pretty. They're not very. They don't freak out. Like at book signings, you see that because you're there to see those people, so they are like, there you are, and it's kind of fun and it's flattering. In real life, walking around, I've only had it happen like once or twice, and when I was getting my first ultrasound, that happened. Actually, that's a fun story. Actually, it was funny because I couldn't share it with my readers yet because I didn't know I was pregnant. But I had, you know, as they're doing this invasive ultrasound, because it was only the 8-week one, guys. So remember this. She's like, I know you, and I'm like, great, that's just awesome. And she's like, let's see if we can find the baby. And my husband's dying, like so red. And I was like, of course, like out of all the places for someone to be like, I know your name, I've read your books, it's when I'm getting my ultrasound. So it was pretty epic.
That's so embarrassing.
Yeah, and it was, I think about it, I get embarrassed all over again, but that's good, right? That means my name got out there, so
yeah, right? Your ultrasound tech knew who you were.
My job is done.
Awesome, though. That's funny. That's terrible and funny at the same time. Okay. When you're writing, do you prefer to write good guys or bad guys? And how about when you're reading, do you fall for the bad guy or do you like the sweet, charming guy?
Oh, that's another hard question. I like writing the guy that has no chance of being redeemed and then redeeming him. So I have this problem with like saving and rescuing all the bad guys because I always think that everyone has a little bit of bad in them. It's just a matter of them acting on it. And I think bad guys, you know, the bad boy is just misunderstood. He just hasn't either been taught differently or there's some sort of pain or past things that are keeping him in that cycle or that habitual cycle of the way that he's acting. You know, I used to be really good at writing the good guy, I think, and now I'm horrible at it. Like, I think it's because I've spent all this time focusing on the bad boy that I'm like, wait, the good guy wouldn't say that. He wouldn't do things like that. Like, even writing Ruin, you know, I felt like Wes was a really good guy. He was more of like a reformed bad boy because you could tell he had those tendencies, but because of his sickness and what he was going through, he totally was a good guy now, but he still kind of had those like different thoughts. And so he wasn't as hard to write as a good guy because I knew that, okay, well, this was his story in the past, but now he's fighting that nature because he knows he doesn't have that much time left. But I'm writing a good guy right now, and I'm like, man, this is hard because he's, you know, it's not that he's innocent, he's just trying to do the best thing, but at the same time, I think that good guys have this tendency to come across as being really controlling, and they have a tendency to come across almost being indifferent emotionally. Because they're just trying to be polite or they're trying to be nice or they're trying not to get attached. So the cool thing about writing a good guy is you end up writing a guy who almost has more issues because he has this inability to be vulnerable with the opposite sex or this inability to be vulnerable in a relationship. And so I'm really having fun writing that now, but it's definitely a challenge to me because it'd be so much easier just to write a guy who's just bad and seducing the girl and doing all these horrible things, and I'm like, man, it's almost like she's doing that to him, and so it's definitely been a little bit difficult for me. As far as reading, I really think I like the bad boy. I think that the good guy is interesting, but I think that a lot of authors probably struggle like I do. Like, how do I make this guy, I don't know, tempting and dangerous? I think there's something about danger, there's something about the forbidden that really pulls to readers. I think that's why with the Elite series I have so much fun writing all those males because they're all bad. Like, I mean, even if they're not bad, like internally, like they're bad guys because they're shooting people, you know, like they're not good guys. They're not good clean-cut guys, and I have fun writing that, and I think that there's something so addicting about that. But I do think that some authors take it a little far. I do think that it's easy to kind of get trapped into that mindset where you're only writing those alpha males and they all have the same tendency, and I think the danger with only writing bad boys is you tend to typecast every male character you write. And so I think that there needs to come, that you need to make sure that they're different from each of the other ones, even if it's just something tiny, because it can end up sounding like the same story.
Yeah. And along that line, like I've heard it said that there's only 20 original storylines, and you think that's true? Because I kind of do, because we all sort of tell the same story. It's just how you tell it, right? Do you agree with that?
I totally agree with that. You tell the same story, you just do it in a different way. I kind of say it this way. My husband was actually asking me, I had a couple people on Wattpad wanting to write one of my stories and do fan fiction with it. And I was kind of at first going, I don't know. That kind of feels really invasive because it's, my story and they're going to try to make it their story. But then once I read one of them, I laughed and was like, oh, never mind. Because, your take on something that I write is going to be completely different than my take on it. So what would be fan fiction is actually just basically, in my mind, the same story, just written in a different interpretation. And I think that's what a lot of stories are now, too. It's the same type of love story. It's, love lost, unforgiveness, someone dying, or falling in love for the first time. They're all the same. The bones are all the same. It's just the meat of it is going to be told differently because we all have different perspectives and different point of views. And I think that's what makes reading so interesting. You could read a bazillion vampire books, but they're all going to have a different twist that's going to make them unique to that author and to that genre. So
very true. Very true. I totally agree with that.
Yep. Okay, so my question, do you write one book at a time, or are you working on 3 right now, or do you focus on one series at a time? How do you write? What's your style?
My style is very chaotic. I don't write just one book at a time unless I have to finish that book. But even then, no, I can't lie. I get bored really easy, and I think the only way to prevent writer's block is to be writing multiple stories at once. I write usually about 4 books at one time. They're all different genres so that I don't cross over. I have had my beta readers a couple times have caught me using the wrong character in the wrong story. They're like, oh, whoops, that was the other story you're writing. And I'm like, oh, crap, sorry. I did that. I was writing Seaside and Ruin, and I think Elite at the same time, and I was like, whoops, sorry. But right now I'm writing the 3rd book, the Shame book, and I'm also writing the Seaside novella. And I'm trying to finish up a historical romance, and I need to finish a dystopian, so normally I would have all 4 of them open and kind of be doing little things here and there trying to finish them. Right now I'm on a pretty crazy 2-week deadline with traveling. I don't know how that's going to work. But so I'm trying to put more time into the Shame manuscript, but for the most part my writing style is that I have to be doing a lot of things at once, otherwise I get bored with the book that I'm in. And a lot of times, too, my beta readers will even say, I can tell you're not feeling it, go write something else. And so I'll go and write another story and be like, hey, how's this? I think my biggest problem is that I don't have any self-control when it comes to new stories. So I have all these ideas in my head that I know that I want to do this and this and this and start this series, and I have really good intentions, but I can't do that because then I end up getting distracted and not finishing things. So I've really had to taper down and focus on, okay, well, these are my releases coming up for the next, say, year. So I can work on any 12 books that I want, but they have to all be, within the release dates that I have scheduled. So that's kind of how I control it now. But before it was kind of whatever, but now it's more organized, if you can call that organized.
Organized chaos, right? That's what it is. Organized chaos.
That's what I am.
As long as it works for you, and it obviously does, I say go with it. All right. Let's see. Okay, so I always have to ask, when you're writing, do you have a specific snack you like to have next to you?
Since this pregnancy has started, my #1 snack has been Pirate Booty, those little corn puff chips things.
Ooh, that's good.
Because I've been so sick, right? So I always need something in my stomach, and that's been kind of my go-to. But it sucks because it gets on your hands, and then I feel like I have those Cheeto hands, and I can't touch my computer. So I have to eat, and then I get crumbs on me. It's this process that I don't like being dirty. So that's kind of been my snack, but I can't really eat it in the office. And then I feel guilty when my husband walks in and I'm chomping in front of my keyboard. He's like, should you be eating in here? So that's kind of been my snack of choice. Either that or I down protein bars like it's my job, and I'm always drinking coffee. So those are kind of my things. It used to be wine, but we can't have wine right now, so it's the other stuff.
I have an unhealthy addiction to Crystal Light, and I just will sit with I have a huge water bottle that I'm filling up constantly, and I'm always having to go pee, and Yeah, Crystal Light is like, and string cheese for some reason for me. I don't know what it
Green
is.
cheese is really good. With Crystal Light, that'd be a good little combination. I
It
think.
is a good combination. And walnuts, like raw, just raw walnuts. Those are so good. I
Yours
used
got
to
so
be
clean.
candy.
I like that.
No. I used to be candy. Like I used to like red vines and all that kind of stuff. But like then I like woke up and I'm like, wow, I've gained like 25 pounds in the last
I
year.
wonder why.
I should do something about it.
No more red vines.
I switched from soda to Crystal Light, and now it's sweet and it gets the job done. So. Because it's true, like, if you're just sitting in front of the computer, like, because when I started doing, like, the Release Day Diva stuff, like, I was doing, like, 8-hour parties, like, doing events all the time, and it's like you're just sitting in front of the computer all day long, you know? Mm-hmm. So you forget to, like, oh, I still need to, like, do other things, like, get up every once in a while. And, like,
yeah, move around. No, I totally understand that. I think that happens to every author. I think one day wakes up and goes, what? Like, I gained how much, because you don't realize it. That happened to me, too. I woke up and I was like, and I think I'm 40 pounds heavier. Yep. And, I had to start adding workouts back in and, like, go on a strict diet and stuff. But it made me feel better. And I think in the long run, it's probably why I was so overstressed, because I wasn't healthy but didn't realize it because I was so immersed in my little book world. But, yeah, now I feel great. But, yeah, it takes finding what works for you too, schedule-wise. So
it's true. Yeah, it's true. Like, and working out, like adding in a workout, or even like going for a walk, like it clears my head so much, and it like then I'm like all creative. Like when I get home, I'm like gotta type furiously on the. I was out of the house for an hour. Now I need to like wake up for the last time. Like it's terrible. It is. Where I'm so like, my husband's like, we're gonna have a rule where at night when I'm home, you're not allowed to have your iPhone. You're not allowed to have that next to you. Like, you need to like cut the cord and just be away. And I'm like, wait, what does away mean? What is that? Like, what does turning it off mean? Like I don't know.
Okay, I don't understand those terms either.
Yeah, you're so used to like being accessible, like it being accessible. Like for me, like being accessible to my authors, because that's what I always said was like I'm always available if you have questions. Like I'm here to hold your hand. I'm here to do all this stuff. But it's like you can't do that, right? Like you can't. Like it's not healthy for you because then you get burnt out and then you're not creative because you're burnt out and it's you have to find a balance for sure.
Yeah, you really do.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, I have a kind of a fun question. If you were to write your memoir, what would you call it?
What would I call it?
What an awesome question.
What would I call it? I don't even know. My own memoir. Maybe just something cheesy like dreams fulfilled or dreams, just because I feel like I am living that right now, even though I'm saying 12, 15-hour days. I'm like, it's crazy, but it's really fun. Like I really would rather, I don't know, I'm living my dream and I love every second of it, and I really feel like it's the coolest job in the world to be able to interact with people all over the world, but also be able to create your own worlds and your own books and impact people. And that's always, ever since I was little, that's always been my dream. It's not necessarily, I didn't dream about being a writer when I was little, but I dreamt about impacting and leaving an impact and leaving a legacy. And obviously counseling is in my blood, so I always dreamed too, like I wanted to be able to help people, even if it's just cheering them up for the day, and if that means that it's a book or me saying hi or going to book signings and stuff. That's kind of always been what I'm about. So it's kind of cool that I'm getting to live that.
Yeah, that's
awesome.
Cool.
That really is. I love how positive you are, because I really do. It's very refreshing because when you're in this like publishing world and you're in the book world for so long, you tend to get jaded, because there's so much negativity, and it's very refreshing to see somebody so positive all the time, and I like that. I like that you have such a positive outlook, and you really want people to be happy, and you want to like provide that for people, like even if it's just in your writing, or like you said, just like answering a message and saying hi, and like because I know like for me, like I know I'm still totally a fangirl of people, so I always try to remember that, like when people message me on my Facebook page, like I'm like I should answer them like right away if I can, because that would make their day, like that makes people excited, and I never want to forget that. You never want to forget the fangirl sort of mentality, because I think that's where a lot of authors can go wrong, is they forget that your fans are kind of what make you,
I think that's one of the most dangerous things about this emerging market that we have right now, with, a lot of indie authors coming on the scene, a lot of them hitting big right away, or, having their books hit, awesome sales right away. I think it's easy to feel like entitled, like the world owes you something, or it's easy to feel like, well, I'm a big deal. Well, like, you're not. You're really not a big deal. Like, I mean, I don't feel like I'm a big deal. Like, I don't, look at other authors. Like, it's your job, and that's awesome, but your job should never define you so much that you feel like you're better than other people, or like you don't have enough time to do yourself. And I think that the scary thing is it's so easy to let that type of, I don't want to say fame, so it's not necessarily fame, but it's easy to let all of that praise go to your head and turn you into one of those people to where you feel like people don't matter anymore. And I think that, authors need to remember that readers control your career and your future, and they're the gatekeepers. Those bloggers are your gatekeepers, and it's like, it's such a cool, supportive community that the last thing you want to do is be the author that's like, meh. You don't want to be that. And I think that, and to hear, that's how reputations are ruined too with these new authors, or with even old authors. And I think that's why it's so important to stay connected, even though you do feel like you're giving a huge part of yourself away and you are constantly accessible. Like, I always tell people that if you do email me at 2 in the morning, you probably will get a response, or you'll get it pretty fast, because I really do care, and I want to be able to respond to these people and like talk to everyone. And I think that on one end, it's easy to get burnt out, but on the other end, I think that it's so important that you're investing in those people rather than investing in yourself.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. That's awesome. I love your mentality. I really do. It's very refreshing.
Thank you. Yeah.
It looks like we are just about out of time. So do you have anything else you want to say, you want to leave your readers with?
Anything else? I love them. I always say that. I think they always think that I'm crazy. I'm always like, I love you guys. Like, even though I haven't met you, but I really do. I love all their support and just their encouragement. And I feel like I know them all, even though I haven't met probably half of them. But it's really cool to have the type of readership I do, and to be able just to see their support. And I don't think a day goes by that I'm not praying for you guys and just thankful for you, and just feel like it's such a blessing to my life. I think that so often they're like, oh, you've changed my life, or you wrote Ruin, or you did this, and I'm always like, no. Like, when I hear from them, or when I get their encouragement or their support, or when they send me a card in the mail, I mean, that makes my day and changes my life. And I think that it's so easy to look at an author and think, oh, well, if I message them, it doesn't mean anything. But like we said, like, this is a hard career. So, when I hear from them and I get their support, like, it brings me to tears, and I just feel so thankful. So when I say I love you guys, I truly, truly mean that I love you guys, and I'm so appreciative of everything that you do for me.
Well, that's awesome. You're awesome. Totally.
Yeah, you are.
You're amazing. I just think.
Oh, you guys are so sweet.
All right. Well, thank you so much for hanging out with us today and answering our weird questions and allowing us to put you on the spot.
Well, thanks for having me. It was fun.
All right. Bye.
Bye.